Alright everybody, this is the painting tutorial of it. I'm gonna be pretty honest, I'm having a pretty bad day, so if I sound like I'm in a bad mood, it's because I kind of am. But I figured maybe some art will cheer me up. So I'll lay down a green. It is the saturation of it is exactly 50%. You want that so that your lights pop and your darks pop. You don't want stuff that's too dark and you don't want stuff that's too light, and so if your background's kind of half and half, it helps it out. I use the green so that the hues for my colors, like my blues and my reds, are like blood is a good example, is not like bright red and it's more of a crimson. The green will make two vibrant colors pop out, and you'll change them when you see it. Alright, so I grabbed the oil pastel to lay it down. Any brush that's just solid will work fine. And I grab an orange color and I go like just lighter. Like you need an orange tone and then lighter. That's how you reach the peaches. And I'm actually lightening it up a little bit right here in the value adjuster. You can just kind of see where I go. That's why I record in full screen, so that there's really almost no questions about brush sizes or anything like that. So once you got your color picked out for the base color, I'm gonna show you guys how I get my secondary like the shadow colors. I don't use multiply and I don't use the color picker thing where you go down there and click on what color you have and then adjust it. I'll grab an airbrush and I'll grab a color that I want to add in there. Like blue is a good one for shadows. But if you know what your color scheme is, then grab whatever like your secondary color is. Obviously the main light's going to be your primary color, and usually the backlight or the shadowing is your secondary color. So that's a little more advanced. I'll get into that later. But I draw the line for the, I'll grab blue and put it into my peach, and whatever your opacity's at, I'm at like 19 or 18 here. That's how much blue it's adding. So obviously the blue's darker, it's going to make it darker, but it adds in the blue as well, but it still keeps 80% of your original color. So I mean, it doesn't look weird whenever you lay them down next to each other. And so you'll basically, whenever you start in with the secondary color, you figure out where your light's coming from. Mine's going to be top left, obviously, and then you'll just kind of apply that as if your object were three-dimensional. You think about like a sphere or an apple or something, just whatever, whatever object study you might have done. You've got to apply that everywhere. Like her shoulders round, the shadow's round, the biceps round, it's got to be round, like, and you want it to follow kind of the flow of your line work. So kind of just like make strokes that are next to your lines, like follow what you've done. Also keep in mind a lot of where the direction is. The entire right side of her body has to be darker than the entire left side of her body, or it's not really going to portray the fact that my light's coming in from the sides. And I know this is kind of obvious, but it's good info to know. It's just the facts. Like, if your light's coming in from the left, if you don't make the shoulder on the right side darker than the shoulder on the left side, like, I think you've done something wrong. So to get another color, then I'll go and lay another line on top, and it'll make it more dark again and more blue again, and I'll kind of just follow where I already laid out the shadows for the old ones, the first color, and like blend it in so that some parts will get darker and whatnot, and some parts will stay kind of the same color. This is more like your secondary shadow and what you use to add detail into your work and stuff. Like, yeah, the right shoulder was already shadowed, but then her chest is gonna cast a shadow on that too. So then I'll lay down a secondary line. Or with her nose, like it's gonna have a sharper edge. So you want to keep that in mind. Like when it's change of plane, it's gonna fade out. But if it hits like another object or an overlapping object, it's gonna have a real sharp line. Like her bridge of her nose is just a chain of plane, so it has to almost gradient out from the forehead to Peach, then shadow in the bridge of the nose, and then out again towards the tip of the nose, and that'll let you know there's a dip there. But if it's like an object that's on top of another object, like her nose is on top of the left cheek, so it's like there's gonna be a solid line there because the object's there. And what you'll do later is apply like, and now I'm using the color picker, I just want to point that out, I am using the color picker to get different shades so that I'm not just working with just blue and then keep making it darker blue and darker blue. That'd be the same principle of if you just kept making it a darker peach. And that's basically what I'm trying to tell you to avoid. You want to have different flows of hues, different flows of colors, and it makes it look like a better painting. But like I was gonna say, when you have hard edges like on the nose, like I was mentioning, we'll go back and we'll put like a little highlight there, and that'll also emphasize the hard edge. But you have to keep it in mind. And another thing is like the balance of the shadows. Where it needs to be darkest, it needs to be darkest, and where it is not as dark, it needs to be not as dark. The bottom of her, or the upper lip, is going to catch more shadow than the bottom lip, because the bottom lip's going to be getting hit by light. The bottom of the nose and the upper lip are pretty much the darkest parts, and up by the eyes, like underneath your eyebrow and stuff, it gets dark up there as well. I would say generally the nose and the mouth are the darkest, but if your eyes end up being about the same darkness, don't worry about it. Like, it's not like it's wrong, but it's just normally the rule of thumb is just that the nose and the upper lip are kind of the darkest, and you don't want to have like the side of her cheek, because that's round, to have the same sharpness of like the lips and whatnot. So I'm just going in, I'm laying out, I guess what you could call the third shadow. I don't just lay it in, like I'll lay it and then blend it into the other blue, and then you see here I'm grabbing the blue and blending it back, and then grabbing my color and blending it back to the blue. So it's like I'm kind of just fading it in and out and whatnot to get it wherever I want it to be. And it's kind of like pushing and pulling, I think, because it is more like a three-dimensional aspect to it. So if you use a dark color, you're going to push that object back. If you use a light color, you're going to pull that object forward. Like on her eyes, it's one of the better shadows that I'm looking at right now to explain it. The nose is you're pulling it out. When you hit it with a light color, you're pulling it forward, and whenever you're hitting it with a dark color in the eye sockets, you're pushing that back, and that's how you're gonna get your form. Like her tendons here on the neck, and I spent way too much time on the neck, guys, I'm sorry, but I couldn't get it right, and that's all I can do. I'm drawing while I'm recording, so it's like I'm sorry, that's how it is. But the tendons catching light because they're pulling out of her neck, so I'm pulling that object forward. Then where the tendons dip in between in the middle, like her collarbone there, it's like you have to push that forward backwards, or push that object backwards with the shadows and whatnot. So just always keep that in mind. I'm gonna start adding in the highlights now. That's not the highlights actually, because I use white for the highlights. This is like the backlight. Like, this is the fact that light will reflect off of stuff, and like sometimes you have to have the backlight as well. Like most times if you're sitting in a room, like they're not shining a spotlight on you. Like, it's not just one form of light that's hitting you, and then just there's one light, there's one shadow. Like, you're normally gonna have multiple lighting, and basically the backlight just emphasizes the fact that her entire body's surrounded by light. Like, that's just real life, and there's light always all around you. That's how your eyes see. So it's like if it was completely dark, you wouldn't even see it. So you have to think about that. It's more towards the realism, and I know this is kind of advanced, but I'm trying to explain to you guys how I paint. I mean, a lot of people ask me what I do, and a lot of people that were watching the videos and stuff, they're like, oh, I can't wait till you get to the painting. Well, I mean, here it is. It is pretty complicated. I've gone online and studied this stuff, and I studied and studied. I mean, I've watched just hours and hours of videos just like this, and I'm trying. What I want to do is try and like optimize on the information. I notice either A, people get really repetitive, or B, they don't give you the goods. Like, they won't tell you what their real tricks are and stuff. They try and hoard the information a little bit. So it's like I'm gonna go and, like, I'm still studying obviously, but I'll go out and I'll learn stuff, and as I learn stuff, I'm gonna teach it to you. Right now I'm kind of just going from basics up to what I already know, so that I can, like, you know, bring you guys up to date to where I'm at, and then that way whenever I'm learning stuff or I'm getting creative and just trying out things, I can just show you them. But I have to, like I say in the line work, I have to have the basics so that I can. People are like, well, how are you getting such realistic? I'm just taking these rules and I'm freaking, it's like just applying them everywhere. Never break from the rule. Like, stuff that is fact has to kind of remain fact in art. Like, art is not always about creativity. It is, because you're picking what it is. I could have done the top right, I could have done the bottom right. I mean, you can change anything you want, but some things, like when you pick them, it's a decision and you have to stick to it. So like, I'm doing the white highlights now, so pretty much like what I'm getting at is, like, if it's not the top left of the object, it really shouldn't be receiving any kind of highlight. Like, her right shoulder is a good example, because it did catch highlight, so but only on the top. As soon as it gets to the right side of that object, I stopped it, because that's not where my source of light is coming from. It caught backlight there, fine, but not highlight, because that's like highlights are pretty much expressing where the primary source of light is coming from. Now I'm just taking a little bit of color, and I'm using a gel layer to blow it in with coral. You can use multiply, or, you know, darken, or overlay, or whatever if you're using a different program. Gel works really well for colors, but it makes them darker, so you have to kind of keep them light. Like you see, I'm using pink, and it's coming out like a kind of darker red. So I kind of stayed true to that value. I wanted a little bit darker of a color, but I didn't want it to be super dark, so I grabbed a really light purple almost, slightly darker though, so that it does look like eyeshadows. Like literally the makeup, like not her shadow on her eyes. This is like the color of it, like makeup and whatnot. You know, just trying to make her look cute. It's like I said earlier, like even if you're a guy, like you have to consider all this. Like, makeup does make girls look more attractive. I mean, I'm not saying that, but you get what I'm saying. Like, makeup is kind of known to be something to try and make people pretty and stuff. So it's like, if you're trying to draw a pretty person, sometimes you'll want to use it. Sometimes you'll want a more natural beauty. But I was going for more like a punk kind of look. The red stuck out to me after I picked this. I was like, oh, this is not matching my color scheme. I mean, I know earlier I said I'm throwing red into the skin and whatnot, but it doesn't mean that all your colors shouldn't flow together as well too. So I don't like it. It looks weird. Why would she have purple eyeshadow and like this weird red lipstick? So I'm gonna try and grab a color that's more onto it. But I mean, this is pretty much it. I think you guys can see the process that I use. I change up the color here, and that's really it. I mean, it's not that long, but just try to apply what I taught, because that's what's gonna get you the results.